Welcome, everybody, to another age of radio. Mercury, your home for podcasting and other pop culture news. My name is Jeremy Quintanilla. I am the co-founder and co-founder of Age of Radio, the host of Age of Radio Mercury. And as you can see right now, I am by myself because my friend Trey, apparently all of his relatives are in the police force here in Arizona, and they had a graduation, and I think he is having one of his cousin's birthday parties here, if I'm not mistaken. Something's going on, but you're going to be stuck with me. So half the time, I'm going to see if I can ask myself some questions like, hey, Jeremy, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm doing pretty good, other Jeremy. I had a fantastic week. We went to go live at the Phoenix Zoo. We'll see exactly what that looks like as we move forward. But in this episode, we're going to talk about how algorithmic trends now write pop culture, demanding short hooks and intermediate satisfaction, where albums turn into singles and singles become 10-second hooks for social platforms. Also, iHeartMedia and TikTok launch a groundbreaking partnership to connect TikTok's cultural energy with iHeartMedia's unmatched scale and reach. And in other news, in broadcast news, NBC Universal revives NBC Sports Network after 4 years, realizing there's still life in cable television. And I think that is a bunch of hogwash, because who watches cable television anymore? In fact, if you watch cable television, let me know in the comments if that's something that you do. And if you don't watch cable television and you are all about that life of streaming services and having 1,000 subscriptions and having as many of them as possible. For example, I have Peacock, I have ESPN Plus, I have Hulu. Well, I guess it's Disney Plus and ESPN Plus, and all of them bundled up into one plus. So I have all of those. I have Netflix, I have HBO Max. I have no idea who would be using cable TV in any way whatsoever. So if you don't use cable TV and you are anti-cable TV, I want you to drop a like and let us know that. Again, Trey, I would normally at this time of the episode be, Trey, how was your week? And Trey would respond to me, but Trey's not here. So, Jeremy, how was your week? Well, other Jeremy, my week was fantastic. I hope everybody had a chance to watch us live at the Phoenix Zoo. We had a fantastic, actually, we had an amazing, let me see if I can hit the amazing button. We had an amazing time at the Phoenix Zoo this last Saturday. We went live from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. We were able to talk to Joaquin. You're like, who the hell's Joaquin? Joaquin is a member of the Phoenix Zoo, and he let us play with his skink. And I know that sounds horrible, but a skink is a cute little lizard. It had a tail that had a mind of its own, that it could wrap around stuff and pull stuff and do all kinds of cool stuff with its prehensile tail. So we have the prehensile tail situation going on with the skink. Then we had Jay Photos, who is a comic book writer, an artist for Image Comics since the beginning days, it sounded like, from the time when Todd McFarlane started Spawn. So we were able to talk to Jay. We were also able to talk to Matt Strangeways. He is actually the person that was coordinating our ability to be there at the zoo. And one of the things that I really liked about being at the zoo is they had us down in a little area, like a presenting area. So there were times, especially when we were doing the live presentation of the skink, there were tons of people there watching our show. That was just amazing to have that happen. And to be able to do a live skink segment is actually one of my overall dreams, being in media and entertainment. Again, I started off my life in media and entertainment, and then I took a backseat for 20 years to get really rich with finance and accounting and going to school and working and doing a lot of stuff. And now getting back into the media and pushing some of these things forward that I wanted to do when I was younger. And one of those things was having a live show like this, and the ability to have an actual live animal segment was freaking amazing. There's the word again. Amazing. It was amazing. And I'm so happy that I got the opportunity to do it. And I want to give a big shout out to Matt, because Matt was the reason why we were able to do it. And I'm just very blessed. And I want to give him a huge shout out. The other person that we interviewed was Danny Marianino, and Danny Marianino was or is an author of Dana and the Lost Lizard and the what was the first one? The Night of the Gabagool, and then he's also going to be making the Feast of the Gabagool. I'm going to be bringing him on to some other shows that I have. Again, I have my show Age of Jeremy that over the last couple of weeks we haven't had a new episode out, but that show is all about my business adventures and side quests, and we're doing a new segment that's a live talking segment called Conversations as well, and then I'm working to add in some other on-demand video for that too. I've been diving deep inside of how to grow, content and continuing to grow live shows from YouTube specifically. And one of the things that they do talk a lot about is having additional on-demand videos. But again, you can see this show at Age of Radioverse, if depending on where you're watching it on YouTube, and on the YouTube at Age of Radioverse. We have all of our audio podcasts that are going there. Big shout out to the Come Up podcast. Make sure that you check out that podcast that is brand new on the Age of Radio podcast network, and you can get that wherever you get your podcasts. And we're working on getting it on YouTube, because of the fact that YouTube, for some reason, when I'm adding podcasts to it now, it wants me to identify myself, and I have to send another driver's license in, and I've sent all kinds of stuff in. So again, make sure that you check out all of that stuff. We're going to jump into some news so I can talk to myself for an hour and a half and ask myself questions, because Trey is doing family stuff. Actually, I'm a big fan of family stuff, so I think that people should do family stuff. But in the event that you're not going to do family stuff, you should head on over to TikTok and hang out with TikTok. iHeartMedia and TikTok have partnered to launch their first of its kind multi-platform partnership. iHeartMedia, the leading audio company in America, and TikTok, the world's leading destination for short form mobile video, announced this week, specifically on November 10th, a groundbreaking multi-platform partnership that will bring TikTok creators into iHeart's ecosystem. So this collaboration includes the launch of the TikTok Podcast Network, which will feature up to 25 new podcasts hosted by TikTok creators, as well as a national broadcast and digital radio channel, and a series of live events integrations. And I think this is really important. Joey asked me earlier today, he said, Jeremy, are podcasts back? Because I keep seeing a bunch of like advertisements on how to get your podcast started, how to make money with podcasting. And I don't think that they really were ever away. I think what's happened is that the concept of what a podcast is has turned into this thing where it is video. Whenever we're sitting here talking to the camera in longer form content, providing information, or we're talking back and forth with another individual, maybe an interview, people are looking at that as all as podcasts. If you've watched this show for the last couple of years, you'll know that the main thing that me and Trey kind of argue about in regards to this is the fact that a podcast is really when you can distribute something vis-a-vis RSS feed in the form of maybe video media or audio media. But now it's really anybody sitting down and talking. So this type of thing makes sense. And we're going to start to see more and more of this type of collaborations, because everybody's going to want to find a way to grow their main platform. So for example, if TikTok goes out there and starts these, podcasts with iHeartRadio, then more people are going to learn about TikTok. More people are going to go and then follow those people maybe on TikTok, or they're going to be more integrated into TikTok. And likewise, if you're on TikTok and you find out that one of your favorite creators has one of these podcasts on iHeartRadio, then you're going to want to go over to iHeartRadio and listen to what is going on. So I think this is something that was just that was expected to happen, in my opinion, for the most part, because these types of things need to happen, because these types of partnerships drive audience members from one platform to the other platform, and we're going to continue to see that evolve over time. So I'm excited for this. I think this is great. One of the things that, I've always believed in that maybe other people don't believe in. Look, the thing with TikToks, or with podcasts, you might not make a lot of money making podcasts. You might want to just go out and do it for the sake of going out and doing it, because it's something that you enjoy, and it's information that be provided to people in a medium, in a different type of medium where there's better explanation. The reason why we have this podcast is because I don't feel that there is enough podcast news that's out there, and I wanted to be able to take some of that type of news and intermix it with other pop culture news, in the sense because podcasting forever is going to be a way in which it shapes the world around us or shapes our culture. And because of the fact that information is being distributed vis-a-vis podcasts, and it's going to continue to rise and rise, and it will always be available, because again, it's one of the best ways and easiest ways for people to sit down and have a conversation, and then to distribute it and then share that with the people that might be interested in that content. It's not always about trying to make money, it's about distributing and sharing content to the communities that you specifically care about. Now, in our case, we also use this as a form of content marketing, kind of the way that maybe TikTok is using it, where you can come and listen to this, you learn about what we're doing, and then you learn about the other Age of Radio podcasts, and you learn about the other, the other shows that I have, the other stuff that Trey has going on. And again, and then this eventually rises because we do sell ad space to these types of things, and then it will get advertisers more interested, and then we can cross sell them to all of the podcasts around the podcast network. That's like the purpose of what we're doing. And so in the sense, there's twofold there, but a lot of the times we think, okay, well, should everybody be able to have a voice? 100%. It's just whether or not you want to listen to that voice is all that really matters in the end. But every community needs to be provided information. And one of the best ways, in my opinion, to distribute that information is doing stuff like this. I have tons of lights now. I have 1, 2, 3 lights. I have, the douchiest, no offense, but the douchiest microphone of all time, just because it was the go-to microphone for podcasts, but it's not my favorite microphone. In fact, there's much better microphones than this. Sure, no offense, sure, you have other fantastic, great microphones, but this one is a piece of, it's like, it's popular, but it's not the best that's out there. Not saying that I'm judging you if you use it, because I'm obviously using it. Plus, it looks really cool on here. There's another cooler one. That's the Neumann TLM 107 and 8, I think it is, or 104, 103. That's the one that Howard Stern uses. In my opinion, that's the best podcast for radio and for podcast, or best microphone for radio and podcast. But as Jinx would say, come on, Jeremy, you're trailing off here on the side. And it's easy to trail off because I don't have anybody to talk to. So I'm just talking into a camera with the 5 people that are on here. So all 5 of you, make sure that you like where you're watching this at. Share it with a friend so I can get 7 people to hear me rant for an hour by myself, because Trey's out with his family. All right, so Jeremy, getting back into other news, let's head on over to the other news that we have going on. And the other breaking news that I wanted to talk about today was how algorithmic trends decide what becomes global pulp culture. So one of the things for me is that I enjoy the changes of society, and I try to keep up with a lot of those things. I'm 42. Some people may say that I'm going through midlife crisis because I enjoy all the things that, the teens like, but that's not necessarily the case. I enjoy staying up with, I'm a first adapter when it comes to technology for the most part. I enjoy what's going on in pop culture. I enjoy learning about the stuff that's out and the things that are really shaping the way in which we do things in our lives, right? One of the biggest things is like, the fact that K-pop Demon Hunters has taken over the world, I think is something that we should be looking at from the context of, okay, what's interesting about this? Why is this happening? And it is shaping who we are and the things that are happening in society. And those are the things that we try to focus on when we're trying to, kind of come up with stuff for the show, and the things that I really enjoy. But it's really interesting because the global pop culture is changing because of algorithms. And so I think it's fair to say that the way in which we get information, it's much shorter now. The things that stick are the things that we can change into memes. And there is a article in Culture that I want to bring everybody's attention to that talks a little bit about, how algorithmic trends decide what becomes that pop culture. Pop culture used to be decided by tastemakers, record labels. When I was growing up, there was magazines that had rock stars on it and rap hip hop stars, and those were the things that you would watch, and you'd be like, oh, I want to get those jeans, or I want to get that shirt, or I want to try that moisturizer, or something along those lines. And it would be through word of mouth. I would get some information, and then I would share that with my friends in real life, and then they would be like, "Oh, that's cool," and then it would repeat. But the algorithm doesn't follow that normal culture anymore. It builds it, and what trends on any platform today can turn into a worldwide phenomenon tomorrow. So when we think about K-pop Demon Hunters, and that's the reason why I brought it up, when we think about K-pop Demon Hunters, the freaking music in that thing is great. And it's also great, okay, because one of the things that happens with music and culture is the more and more that we hear it, the more and more that we choose to like it. So, like, for example, when I first finally got done with K-pop Demon Hunters, I told Joy, I was like, oh yeah, the movie was okay. I still think that. I think that the movie's okay. I think that the storyline is, there's a lot of storylines that are very similar. And I think that what makes it so amazing, though, is the music, and that it touches into the K-pop phenomenon that has been taking over the United States over the last, 5 years or 6 years or whatever. And so when I said that to him, he's like, well, watch it a couple more times, and then the next thing you know, you'll be singing all of the songs. And the reason why that is because when you repeat that stuff, there's a certain frequency that most music is at. And that frequency we find enjoyment in. So as long as the song is kind of like in that frequency, the more that you repeat it, the better you feel about yourself. And so when you hear that, then you're like, oh, I want to hear this again because I felt freaking good when I heard it the first time. And so what ends up happening now in society is that once we grab attention to something that has music associated with it, or it's something that can, especially with music based off of the frequency that I was just talking about, and it becomes like a meme, or it becomes music that's in a bunch of TikToks that we're hearing over and over, like Golden. Like, I heard Golden a bunch of times. I never put it together that was part of K-pop Demon Hunters. I had just heard it in like TikToks and in Reels. I was like, oh, this is a really cool song. And I enjoy listening to that song. I was like, oh, it's in K-pop Demon Hunters. And then when I saw K-pop Demon Hunters, I was like, oh, I love this song, right? And so that's the thing that really kind of drives us then turning something into culture, because now we're hit with it so much, right? But it's an invisible hand behind the feed that's shoving it in our face. So the idea of discovery used to feel random. People found songs through the radio, they found it through friends, live shows. Now discovery sits in the hands of however these algorithms are pushing out information. So if it's something that's seen, that's been maybe liked a bunch of times, depending on how the algorithm works, then people are going to start hearing it and seeing it more and more and more. And whether or not we really like it or not, from our first get-go, we're just exposed to it over and over and over. And then that's what eventually drives what we decide as part of our culture. And so these invisible curators scan listening patterns, they scan the watch time, the social reactions to predict what holds attention. And the more a piece of content keeps people scrolling, the more it spreads. Popularity no longer rises from community tastes alone, it builds through patterns that are coded to reward consistency and volume. And whether or not you think that that's a good thing or a bad thing, what I'm saying is that is the thing that's actually happening to us, that every platform runs its own rhythm. TikTok pushes a 15-second burst that favors catchy intros, while YouTube prioritizes longer engagement and steady watch time. Spotify analyzes skip rates, listening loops, and even the time of day that users hit play. Together, they form a loop that determines what the world hears next. The thing, though, is what my problem is, and I wish, Trey was here to discuss this, or Jinx didn't have to work, or Chuck was here, or someone was here. It's just me. That's okay. So I'm going to tell you my thoughts on it. The problem with this is that if it hits the right people that enjoy it out the gate, then it becomes the thing that eventually spreads, whether or not that it's good or not, to the whole community, to like the world as a whole. And so we end up getting fed whatever it is that the people that are wanting to engage with stuff, or that are actively engaging with stuff, than whether or not it's something that we really, really enjoy. And then those are the things that just become what it is that we're looking at is what our culture is. And there's I believe in I believe our society isn't really, so our society now is, autocratic, I guess, but it's really more technocratic. And so the people that are really running the world right now, or at least in America, are Metas, Microsoft, Apple, um, uh, X, Elon Musk, the big tech companies. And so there's some really good books out there that are about this technocratic society that we live in, where they're the ones that are running it. They're also the ones that are propagandizing us because they can still choose. They say that it's just the algorithm, but they're the ones that choose how the algorithm works. They can still choose the stuff that's being fed to us. So, for example, one of the biggest arguments between the TikTok in the United States was that in America, TikTok was still feeding kids suicide stuff, kids depressing stuff, killings, a bunch, things that weren't like super uplifting. Where the TikTok that's in China, it was feeding them STEM stuff, education stuff, things that could indoctrinate them to have a higher aspiration for, say, education. And then our aspiration was depressing stuff, or even things such as consumerism that then was focused just on them buying stuff. And that's a perfect example of how we're being propagandized by these tech companies, and it therefore then bleeds over into our culture and is what American culture eventually becomes. So it used to be that artists worried about radio play. Now they worry about the algorithm's favor. So again, we're changing the way in which, for example, here I'm always trying to find out ways. I want this to grow. My goal is to grow this to 10 million views over the next couple of years, right? I want to get to 30,000 viewers an episode by the end of this year. That's an audacious effing goal. But so because I'm trying to think of that all of the time, I'm like, okay, what could I put in the show that's going to grab that attention rather than the thing that I want to actually go and talk about? Because we're always trying to figure out and provide the information that's going to feed the algorithm that's then going to push that. And then that, whether or not that's something that the creator, like me in this case, would care about, we're basing what we care about and what we want to push based off of the views or for the algorithm. Again, so how can we still find that authenticity? Because audiences are starting to notice the pattern. So viral sounds come and go before artists can perform them live. Influencers rise overnight and fade just as fast. Still, there is a counter movement growing beneath the surface: niche creators and independent musicians who build loyal communities without chasing algorithmic approval. They use smaller audiences and direct connections to break the code, proving that authenticity can still thrive even when discovery depends on data. These artists rely on storytelling, live shows, and real interactions rather than predictable trends. So you can still make it happen. You stay true to what you want to be talking about, what you're sharing, and then you go and you find those niche communities, and then you try to serve them outside of the algorithm, and then it grows in which the way that it used to grow in the past, from people spreading it, talking about it, sharing it on their socials after they see it, as these artists storytelling, live shows, real interactions. And it grows a lot slower though. And so I think that we're in this weird place where there are people that realize that this is all just about getting views and clicks. But there are also people that have, maybe like myself, who believe in the authenticity. So I want what we talk about on this show to be authentic, and then I want to use marketing, I guess, strategies to get it out to the other people. I would love to do a lot, live show. I was just gonna say I'd love to do a live show. We do live shows all the time. That's why we do live shows, so we can go and get into those communities, so we can get the information, and we continue to grow what we are trying to do, which again, the mission of Mercury is to provide podcasting and pop culture news. And the goal of Age of Radio is to help creators succeed and make it easier for them to succeed and more affordable for them to succeed over time to get their creations out there in the open. So with that, before we go into other podcasting news, I want to turn it over to Jeremy. Yes, Jeremy. Can you tell me about what's going on in the Age of Radio community? Well, yes, Jeremy, I can tell you what's going on in the Age of Radio community. We have so much stuff going on in the Age of Radio community. If you don't know, Age of Radio is a podcast network. We help content creators distribute their podcast, grow their podcast, and we work to help monetize their podcast. And one of the great things that we're doing right now, if you are a company or a creator and you want to share your message on the Age of Radio, a podcast network, we are actually doing a $200 ad giveaway. If you come and sit down with us, we can show you how the Age of Radio Podcast Network works. We can talk to you about your goals of what you're trying to accomplish with your ad spend over the Christmas season. And for the holidays, we're giving you a $200 ad credit. So reach out to us at adspace@ageofradio.com if you're interested. Reach out to us at support@ageofradio.com if for some reason no one answers you with the ad space one, or DM us on our Facebook group, DM us in Facebook, on our X account, in our Instagram, and we will definitely sit down and talk with you about the advantages of working with the Age of Radio podcast network to advertise whatever it is that you want to advertise. And then I want you to also listen to all of our shows. So if you head on over to ageofradio.com, you can check out all of our podcasts. We have podcasts from everything from motivation, such as the Coach JV podcast, to Mysterious Circumstances, a true crime podcast. We have movie reviews podcasts, such as Home Video Hustle, For Screen and Country, Everything I Learned from Movies, MAFS, Married at First Sight Virgin, a show about a show. There's one thing that is true. If people like TV, shows and movies, they also enjoy podcasts that talk about them, because we have a plethora. But we also have the Healthy Grocer podcast. We also have Stress Test, which is a health podcast. Melanated Memoirs of Pop Culture podcast. We also have sports podcasts. So we have something for everybody. So check us out at ageofradio.com. You will find your next favorite podcast there, and we are working on bringing more and more out this year. So if you have a podcast and you're interested in joining our Age of Radio Podcasts Network, where we manage the distribution, we help grow your show, and we help to work to monetize your show, reach out to us also at support@ageofradio.com. We also have a Discord. So check out our Discord in the upper right-hand corner at ageofradio.com. Actually, no, wait. No. Hit this bad boy right there. Hit that bad boy right there. Head on over to the Age of Radio Discord. Come and hang out with us. We have a anime roundtable night. We have a game night. You can talk about equipment. You can share your podcast. You can get all of this podcast news there as well. So go on over to ageofradio.com or click that QR code. Get the link to our Discord. Come and hang out. Trey puts in fun questions. We're trying to work on more and more activities, because again, we're all about building communities and being in the community. Last thing, if you head on over to ageofradio.com, give us your email. Trust us, we won't spam you, but we can get podcasting news. You can learn about all the cool stuff that's going on with Age of Radio through our Addicted to Podcasting newsletter, and we are working on going hard into newsletters, more often, more the time. Maybe not more often, I guess more often, in the sense that we want to get you the information so you know about all the cool stuff that's going on in the Age of Radio verse. All right, back to you, Jeremy. Well, thank you, Jeremy. That was fantastic. Again, it's so hard running a show when it's just you talking. Shout out to, I'm not a huge fan of this person, but I think Ben Shapiro does his show all by himself. Like, I know he has interviews and stuff, but there's a part where they're just talking about the news and he's just talking and ranting. And I feel like that right now, except I'm not Jewish and I'm traditional. I'm not conservative in any way whatsoever. So I guess there's that. All right, let's go ahead and get to this next article. Inequality in Popular Podcasts, an examination of gender and race ethnicity. This is a study from USC Annenberg, and I thought this was really important because we're starting to see some similar diversity trends happening in podcasts. I have my own opinion on that, which, guess what? You're watching this live show, so I'm going to share my opinion with you, because That is really what this show is specifically about. And then I'm going to write some heated words over to StreamYard because I don't like the way in which I can switch between articles, and I don't want to share all these at one time. But here we are. All right, so Inequality in Popular Podcasts, an examination of gender and race ethnicity. This is from Dr. Stacy Smith, Dr. Catherine Pieper, Ariana Case, Sam Wheeler, and Zoe Moore. I'm sure that they're academics, and if you know me, I love academics, and I love academic papers. Can't go wrong with an academic paper, and you can't go wrong with USC academic papers, is what I always say. Inequality in Popular Podcasts, an examination of gender and race ethnicity. Podcast hosts are primarily male. Well, freaking shocker. So 35.9% of top 100 podcast hosts were female. 33.2% of all 592 podcast hosts that were surveyed were female. So you have podcast hosts that were female, and you have so the top 100, 35.95% of the hosts were female, and of the population that they did it, 33.2% of the podcasts were female, the host. Total hosts across all 592 podcasts, 1,018. Total hosts across the top 100 podcasts, 167. Podcasting falls behind visual entertainment. Gender of podcast hosts compared to other entertainment formats. So 35.9% for top 100 podcasts, 50.4%, 44.9% for TV series regulars, and 37.7% for popular music artists. Okay. And then when we look at this, we can see a divergence in females and males in the different actual participation rates that they have. So gender of podcast hosts by genre across 592 podcasts. So as you can see here, there's hardly any females that are podcast hosts in business and tech, which is very discouraging in my opinion. In sports and fitness, 18%, so it's a little bit higher. Comedy, 23%, education, 40%, news, 41%, art, society, and culture is 43%, true crime, 53%, and other 28.6%. So podcast hosts are primarily white, no surprise. And so podcasts perform like other types of entertainment. Percentage of underrepresented creatives across entertainment. 22.3% of top 100 podcast hosts, 25.2% of film, 44.9% of TV, and 44.6% of popular music artists. Podcasts skew toward male conversion. Of the 6,340 guests across the top 100 podcasts, the percentage of guests by gender, 27.2% of podcast guests were women. So even the guests aren't, there's not like a good split of guests. 37.4% of podcast episodes had 1+ female guests. And so this continues to go on and talk about all of the data. And then it's going to give some kind of like context to it. Americans spend a significant portion of their time each week listening and watching podcasts, and the rate of listening has increased substantially over time, according to the Infinite Dial. 8% of Americans aged 12 and older listened to a podcast per week in 2014. By 2023, the percentage jumped to 31%. In 2014, Americans spent 5.6 minutes per day listening, and in 2023, 25.5 minutes. Given the uptick in exposure to podcasting, it's important to examine what consumers may be listening to and or receiving. At the Annenberg Inclusive Initiative, they've documented that males outnumber females across film, television, streaming, music, video games, and some forms of advertising. This imbalance is demonstrated both on screen in terms of who is participating in storylines as leads, main characters, or the entire cast, as well as people working behind the scenes. The popularity and financial prosperity around podcasting causes to wonder if the same tilted trends we see in other media will populate this medium. As money moves into entertainment via production, marketing, and advertising, you typically see women and people of color pushed to the margins. Consequently, they anticipated the same trends in podcasting, particularly with those shows that were more popular or money makers. And so the reason why I'm bringing this up is, you might be thinking, Jeremy, why are you bringing this up? And the reason is, it's not that I think that we need to go and be like, you need to have women. I mean, that could be one way to do it. All that I want to present here is the fact that it exists. And the reason why it's a problem is because when you don't have other types of stories, narratives, background, life experiences, you are just fed the same type of life experiences, context, narratives. And that's why it's so important to have diversity. When people, again, I get it. I get it. For anybody that's out there, I appreciate if you're watching this. If you're a libertarian or a Republican or conservative, I don't judge anybody. I'm personally very liberal, and I voice that as much as I can because it's something that I personally believe in. And one of the things that I do believe in is that, when, yes, you want to hire people for skill and you don't want to base it off of color or race or gender, and I get that. But when you have people of more colors, races, and genders, you are actually getting a different skill, an additional skill set along with it, because their life experiences can vary significantly between other genders, races, and people of color. Okay. And so because of that, there's a kind of a push to be like, well, it should always be about the skills. But the thing is life experience is a skill. Like, maybe not per se a skill, but it is a divergent from someone else's thought process. It's a divergent from the way in which they understand the world. One of the things that I love to study is linguistics. And so I'm not like in any way whatsoever like a linguistic master, but one of the things that people fail to understand is that if you have a language, okay, if you learn Spanish first, or if you learn, Danish first, or if you learn, I love the Danes. So if you're Danish, hit me up. And then, and if you are German, you speak a different language. Okay. Point is that the different languages you speak, the way in which words are created, okay, and the way in which we understand them in our mind is the actual way in which we understand the world. So therefore, if you speak a different language, you inherently, because of that, can understand the world in a different context, because that's the way in which we understand the world, is based off of how we communicate vis-a-vis our language, because the language syntax isn't the same in every single language. It changes. So again, just from that as an example, it's very important that in the podcasting community, or in any community, we're very adamant that we need to have diversity of people inside of the groups of people that we are working with. There should never be a time when everybody always agrees on something. I mean, for example, in our Mercury group, there are times when Jinx tells me I need to do things better. There are times when I tell Jinx she needs to do things better, or Joey needs to do things better, or my Trey, I ask Trey to work on certain things so that we can make sure that we're doing a better show, right? When those disagreements or those arguments come up, we're understanding things differently. And the more diversity we have in that, the more different experiences are understood from different people. And then they can share that with the other people. And if the people are open to whatever's being said, then they can take that and reassess it. And then we can make the thing that we're creating stronger. And I get it. I get it. We maybe don't need to have it where we're focusing on a quota. It doesn't mean that you can't look at how something is diverse and be like, oh, let's think about this and see, can we put initiatives in place that still keep things fair equally, but we get a different group of people to be able to come into our company or into our creative circle, or whatever the case is, because the more that you have of that, even political differences, the more political differences you have in a group of people, the more that people start to understand the other people based off of their life, and then we can actually come to agreements on a lot more stuff. And so I encourage you, if you have a podcast, or you have a podcast that has a group of people, or you have a podcast where you invite hosts on, maybe think about bringing on, people, going and trying to find people in different areas, in different walks of life, different groups of people, different colors of people, races of people, genders of people, and have them on your show, have them on your team, because we don't want this to continue to happen across every medium that we go through, because we start getting the same narrative, the same story, the same explanation over and over. And that's what we don't want to happen in any group that we are a part of. We want those groups to have diversity, so that we can all grow and change together. And it saddens me that as podcast is growing, that this is the same thing that's happening, that has happened in all these other mediums. So let me know what you think down below. Hey, if you have a group of people that you hang out with, let me know how you guys work. And I guess group of people, I mean, like, I guess if you have like a group of content creators that you work with, or you have a business that you have, how do you guys manage having diversity and inclusion inside of that? I am not in agreement um, with anti DEI type of goals. I think that we should always have them. And I think this is another place that we might need to look at them in the area of podcasting. So again, we can have more diversity and inclusion, I guess, would be the best way that I can say that. All right, moving right along. The cost of attention in podcasting. The cost of attention. Podcasting Marketing Academy and Lower Street published a new report detailing the ROI of audio versus video podcasts. My guess is out the gate that video podcasts are going to return a better return on investment, but I don't know. And that's the reason why we have an article. So give me 1 second to get this shared for us, because usually I make Trey talk while I'm pulling these up. But as you see, Trey's not here. I'm not sure if you noticed that yet, but Trey is not here. Trey with his family. On November 12th, Podcast Marketing Education and Media Company, Podcast Marketing Academy, and branded podcast production company Lower Street published a podcast marketing trends cost of attention report. Based on a survey of 308 podcasters who shared detailed data, including their audio downloads, YouTube views, consumption, metrics, budget, revenue, and more, the report breaks down the benefits and drawbacks of each show format, ultimately asking and answering the question, what is the return of investment, or ROI, of each show format in terms of audience attention? A lot of brands and creators, this is a quote, have been feeling like if they want to be more successful, they have no choice but to create a video show. And this is from Podcast Marketing Academy founder Jeremy Enns. It's obvious that video platforms, YouTube in particular, offer potential for discovery beyond anything that's historically existed in audio-only podcast platforms. And that's one of the key things here, is that usually in audio podcast platforms, right, you don't have everybody on the same platform. So the way that the algorithms work, it's not going to get into the masses of people. The thing where YouTube has changed that, the place where YouTube has changed that has been the fact that YouTube is for the masses. So if you want to get more discovery, you need to also go where the masses are. And so that's why more people have gone to YouTube. Now, is that the best thing to do? Maybe not, especially based off of the segment that I did on just a few moments ago about how algorithms change like what we're seeing and so forth, and trying to stay authentic. But the point is that more and more people are going to YouTube because more and more people are on YouTube. So having some type of video makes sense. But what they wanted to do, they wanted to know whether the typical video podcast was experiencing those hyped up benefits, and if so, how much, if anything, it was costing them in additional expense. So some of the key findings of the report include the following metrics, highlighting the differences between audio only and audio video shows. All right, so the average cost per hour of audience attention, total plays per episode, total monthly podcast consumption time, annual revenue, production budgets, time spent producing each episode, the team size, the show purpose and target outcomes, attributable client acquisition, and average lifetime customer value, cross platform audio audience sizes. Is what they found. Roughly 90% of the brands coming to them now want video with their podcast. Video gives you the ability to leverage incredibly powerful platforms, not just to expand your reach, but also to hone in on your audience and generate more engagement. Reflecting on the findings of the report, regardless of where you stand on the audio versus video podcast debate, it's important to know that both the report will both affirm and challenge your current point of view, meaning it's clear that both approaches have their upsides and also their drawbacks. But as Jeremy here points out, not the other Jeremy that's also hosting this, but his name's Jeremy. So now there's 3 Jeremys in the mix. But this other Jeremy thinks that it's the best thing that they could have learned from this report, that regardless of what type of show you want to create, there's opportunity for you. If anything, the important thing is to pick your lane and commit to it and stay consistent, and then you can grow. So essentially the report's going to go through, and it's going to go through these highlights, but essentially what they eventually found was that a lot of the ROI, you have a better ROI from the actual video podcasting or from video, right? And it makes sense because everything has really been focused on video. I mean, back in 2023, I was talking about on my channel that a lot of stuff was going to be moving to video. And you can just see this ever since that kind of happened. We have seen this skyrocketing over the last 2 years in podcasting, but it's all been around this idea about video. And right now, video is the thing that captures the attention of people. So my guess is you should probably be in video in some capacity, depending on what it is that you're trying to actually accomplish. All right, moving over into some gaming news. Rockstar faces legal action from UK union after firing more than 30 employees last week. We are confident that what we have seen here is plain and simple union busting. And again, as liberal, I'm supporting of unions and I support workers talking, even though I'm going to say this does not reflect anything in my businesses. It does not reflect 100% when there's more majority than myself, owner of the business. But I think that people in general should talk more about the pay that they have when they communicate with each other, then they can communicate with their leaders, and then they can communicate on making sure that they're getting fair wages or higher wages or growing wages. But the independent workers of Great Britain have launched a legal action against Grand Theft Auto 6 developer Rockstar Games, which we spoke about last week. Rockstar Games recently pushed off the release of Grand Theft Auto 6, which most are expecting is going to be the highest sold video game of all time once it is released. And again, this lawsuit action against Grand Theft Auto 6 developer Rockstar Games is about the termination of employees that they believe the amount to victimization and collective dismissal linked to trade union activity. The action was filed after Rockstar refused to meet and resolve the matter through negotiations, the IWGB's legal team said in a statement. Instead, Rockstar has maintained the termination of the employees it fired last week in a manner the union described as unacceptable and unlawful. Accordingly, we have now issued the formal legal claims against Rockstar on behalf of the claimants. Our members allege that Rockstar's conduct constitutes trade union victimization and blacklisting. So what happened was on October 31st, more than 30 Rockstar employees in the UK and Canada were fired without warning. The IWGB alleged at the time that the employees were fired because of their efforts to organize a union at Rockstar, calling it the most brazen act of union busting the games industry has ever seen. Rockstar parent company Take-Two Interactive denied the claim and said the employees were fired for gross misconduct. Rockstar later clarified that allegation to say the employees were distributing and discussing confidential information in a public forum. The IW, which probably was information related to forming a union or them wanting to form a union or in some way union affirming organization. And so again, the only non-Rockstar people the employees were talking to were labor organizers. Okay, so you have a forum where Rockstar employees want to form a union, they're talking to labor union organizers, and then they get an email, or then they all get freaking fired for gross misconduct. And this actually happened to me in a bank, Wells Fargo, that I won't mention on camera, Wells Fargo, because I am for banks even having unions. I think workers always need to band together to make sure that management and the companies are doing everything they can to take care of them, and that's my opinion. Is what it is. And so again, when I was in Wells Fargo, a bank I won't mention, but Wells Fargo, I found that I had mentioned the act of us forming a union because there was a group of people that were working to form similar style, like employees working together to make sure that, tellers were paid more, bankers were paid more, the people that were kind of at the bottom. And I was in support of that. And I mentioned it in a forum inside of the bank. And within probably 3 minutes of me saying that inside of a bank forum, I got an email from someone saying that I shouldn't be talking about unions at the bank. And my response to that was, I'm going to continue to talk to unions about the bank. If you don't want me to be here, fire me. And I never was fired. And then I became an entrepreneur, became really wealthy on businesses, and then I left the bank. But point is I don't know if that's going to happen in every situation, happen in my situation. But the point is that this is completely garbage if Rockstar is doing that, and they should be ashamed of themselves. And if that is also the case, while I do like Take-Two Interactive, if it continues to go this way, depending on what happens, then maybe we don't buy Take-Two Interactive video games moving forward. But again, that's my opinion. Take-Two Interactive makes some of my favorite video games, so we'll see how long that lasts if they make a really big video game that I want to play. But my point is that that's kind of like the thought process behind a lot of these things. Is if a company does something that you don't like, then you have every right to not buy their stuff. And in reality, maybe you should if it's something that you hold dear to your heart. There's two companies that I actually won't mention on here. But there are two companies that I won't completely buy from or shop from just because they go against my ethical, I guess my integrity, I guess would be the case of it. But one of them is not Target. I shop all the time at Target. Love me some Target. I should go to Target today and buy some stuff. We should buy some Pokemon cards. Working on a Pokemon segment, by the way. Pokemon releases new cards every blue moon, and we're working on having a Toshi come on here and talk about that as a new segment I like to call Pokemon segment, because I have not thought of an actual name for it, but it's coming. Again, we have a lot of stuff in store for this Mercury show. I'm going to do it till I die. In fact, as I'm dying, I will be on here talking to everybody about all of the cool pop cultural things that I'm doing at 90. And I hope that's not actually when I die. I started a protocol, started this thing that I'll talk on the show about as well as I move through it. But collecting more data on my health. If you notice, I have a ring here. I am currently married, but this is not my wedding ring, and I'm currently in the process of not being married. But the point is that this is a Galaxy ring, and it actually tracks all kinds of cool stuff. And I have a Whoop band coming. Whoop, there it is. You guys remember that song? I wish. I need to learn how to put like music tracks on here fast, or have someone where I can queue up music facts. Like a producer, Dustin. If you were here right this moment, I could be like, Dustin, queue up Whoop, there it is. And then I could play Whoop, there it is while I talk about my Whoop band. In fact, we'll call the new segment Whoop, there it is, when I talk about the data collection that I'm doing on my health to live forever. Not really my plan to live forever, just to live longer so we can continue to do amazing stuff and build amazing businesses and have amazing shows like this where I talk by myself in a camera because Trey is off with his family doing family stuff. Can't get mad at him, though. He's a good guy. Good guy. Also, in other news that also has to do with companies that aren't douchebags and firing people for trying to unionize, there is this company, Sega. In fact, I think the Japanese know how to do it better. If you're going to stay in a capitalist society, I think the best capitalist society, even though they went a little bit further right this time with their prime minister, who does happen to be a female, so I think that's great. First female prime minister in Japanese history, but also a conservative prime minister. But I guess for some value, their conservative is probably more our left, and their left is probably more our far left. Someone do some research on that. In fact, if you know the answer to that, give me a like, share this with someone, comment, let me know what you guys think about the Japanese prime minister. But as it relates to video games, Japanese gaming giant Sega announced it will be raising employee salaries once more, 3 years after its last increase. In a press release seen by Video Games Chronicle, the company, which is the creator of Sonic the Hedgehog, stated it would revise salary levels for full-time employees at its Japanese subsidiary and increase the starting salary for new hires. According to Sega, the increase serves two purposes. One, creating an environment in which employees can work with peace of mind amid recent social changes, such as rising prices, and recruiting and developing attractive human resources to strengthen global competitiveness. So the key here is that if you want your company to do good, pay your people and provide opportunities for them, is what I'm getting from this. So I'm going to, I guess, take that to heart since I have companies also. As a result of this change, the new starting salary for university graduates joining Sega will increase by 10% from 300,000 yen, which is $1,937 per month, to roughly $2,130 to 330,000 yen. I'll be honest, my frame of reference is probably skewed, which, I'm very blessed and grateful for that. Can someone live off of starting salary of $1,937 per month? I don't think you can live off of that in Japan. If you're Japanese or you know the Japanese economy more than I do, let me know if that is a livable wage. I mean, I guess you and maybe some friends could live at that. I don't know. I think more. Jinx was telling me, like, rent nowadays is like $3,000 a month. This kid can't even rent an apartment in Arizona. Starting out of college, they need to raise that even more, but at least they're trying. I guess you could say in a statement, Sega said, "We believe that human resources are essential to achieving your mission and creating and providing new value." So it's at least a start. You want to see companies raising the salary. We have all kinds of labor union stuff in today's episode. I'm really excited about that article. So first, a sad article about Rockstar and union busting, then a happy labor union article about Sega employees getting more money. Also, Sega's awesome, so you can't get mad at that. And then we have one more labor union article, and that's about Crafton. Crafton, well, not a union article, but more a labor article. Crafton launches voluntary resignation program weeks after declaring its AI-first company future. I feel that this is how can I say it? I can't say it politically correct, so I'm not going to say it in any way whatsoever, just because that's what I'm going to do. So essentially, Korean company Crafton, what they did was in October, recent. So what happened was, this is the Crafton owns PUBG and Subnautica 2. We've talked about them here on the podcast maybe a month ago, maybe, I don't know. Crafton announced that it would, in fact, it was in October or September, because we talked about this, where they said that they were going to become they were going to become a AI first company. And so their goal is to to invest over 130 billion won, which is $88 million, in agentic AI infrastructure and deployment beginning in 2026. So this week, as it boasts record-breaking quarterly profits, the Korean publisher has followed the strategic shift by launching a voluntary resignation program for its domestic employees, according to Business Korea. The program, announced internally, offers substantial buyouts for domestic Crafton employees based on their length of employment at the publisher. So severance packages ranging from 6 months salary for employees with 1 year or less of service to 36 months salary for employees who've worked at Crafton for over 11 years. The voluntary resignation program follows a November 4th earnings call, like I said, where they announced record quarterly profits, and these record quarterly profits were $717 million. So they made $1,717 million in profit, which isn't necessarily cash, but profit. They're going to put $88 million into this agentic AI strategy first infrastructure project. And then rather than firing everybody, what they did was they went out and they said, look, we will pay you a nice severance package if you choose to leave, which is technically, if you want to fire people, this is the right way to fire people. So what you do is you give them you give them the ability to leave, because this is what's gonna happen. You're gonna find people that thought that the company was gonna go under, or not go under, that the company was gonna lay people off based off of this AI movement. And so they are planning on laying people off because of this AI movement, right? You're gonna put 88 million into AI infrastructure that's gonna result in some type of layoffs, of where either people that run the AI or use the AI will have jobs, or people that use the AI or have AI will, or it will replace those other jobs, whether or not there is a user in the company that's using that AI for company stuff. And so what they did was then they went out and said, hey, look, it's probably known that we're going to lay you off and fire you. But instead, what we're going to do is we're going to take some of this profit and we're going to pay it to you if you choose to then go and walk away. Which, again, like I said, it's a better way to fire people, because you're going to find people that maybe don't want to be at the company anymore. That gives them a way out. Okay. It also gives them a way out, and then have the ability to go and find another job, either in the same career path at a place maybe that they also want to work at, or to go and start to do something else that they want to do. Do I think that it's right that the AI is going to be taking all these jobs? Absolutely not. I think that we should work harder to either upskill these people, move them into other areas, train them in a different way so they can keep their job. But in the event that you're in this case with this company, Crafton, they're working to get rid of their expenses, and the largest expense for a company are employees. Crafton CFO Bai Dong-gung, my Korean's horrible, indicated that Crafton had also halted hiring for new positions, telling investors that excluding organizations developing original intellectual property and AI-related personnel. So they stopped hiring people. They're going to continue hire people that have that can develop original intellectual property, and they're going to continue to hire people that are AI related personnel. So they're trying to get rid of other people without firing them, so they can bring in other people to focus on these new initiatives that they're having. In my opinion, this was a much better strategic move than just laying people off. What will eventually happen is, if not enough people do it, they will probably eventually lay people off, and then we'll have them back on the show where we're saying how Crafton laid a bunch of people off and there's a war going on in South Korea about it. I don't really think the last thing's going to happen, but the first thing might happen depending on how this gets going. All right, with our last article for the day, I hope you've been excited listening to me talk for 1 hour with not one person to talk to, and me just talking to myself and coughing every 5 minutes. Want to let you guys know that on December 7th, we're also, December 6th, jinx. I remember, because I remember the birthday that's happening on December 7th. I want you to remember that. On December 6th, we'll be at Foothills Library, if I'm not mistaken, for Glendale LibCon. I don't know who we're going to have to interview that day, but we will not have a live animal. So if you have a live animal and you live in the Foothills area and you want to come and give us a live animal segment of maybe your dog, can't do a cat because I'm highly allergic, maybe you have a squirrel or a hamster or a gerbil, come down, hang out with us. We'll do a little animal segment about your pet at the Glendale Foothills Library for Glendale LibCon. I'm working on trying to find people that are going to be there that want to do interviews. Love sitting down and doing interviews. We'll do our famous vendor walkthrough. We're still trying to work on the internet connection for that bad boy. So, Dustin, you only have 6, 15, 21-ish, 23-ish days. I don't know how to count. 23-ish days to fix that. If you guys don't know who Dustin is, this gentleman's Dustin. Isn't he amazing? Look at this transition here, guys. Look at this. Amazing. I want to talk about this picture right here. This one's amazing. This is me and Dustin in Las Vegas at XRP Las Vegas. I'm feeding him from a really fancy restaurant, and I'm taking pictures of Dustin around the world that I'm going to showcase at our Freedom Conference for 3T Warrior Academy. And you know what I think it is? I think it is amazing. I want your opinion on cable. Tell me, do you like cable? Do you watch cable? Do you have cable? I have cable because the cable companies, those Cox Communication people, you know what Cox Communication is? They are not amazing. In fact, if there's one thing that this show does is ruin the oligarchy that is and the monopoly that is Cox Communications. Nothing against the Cox family, I guess, but not a huge fan of Cox Communications. And so you can't cancel your Cox Communications cable because they tell you that if you do, the rest of all of your services will go up for some weird freaking reason. I think it's a big scam and a big lie. And when I have the money and I have the ability, I'm going to change the way in which we get our internet so we can get it for much freer and for better and have better customer service and not have to deal with Cox Communication. They drive me freaking crazy. In fact, if you're with Cox Communications and you work there, I want you to tell your boss that this is an anti-Cox Communication show, even though we're using Cox Internet. Because, again, the oligarch monopoly of Cox Communication is crazy. And then there's, what are my other options? What are the other options, people? If you know the other options, put them in the comments down below. What I think is crazy, though, is there's a cable network returning to TV next week after being shut down 4 years ago. And I don't know if I agree with this article, but I'm going to talk about it. It's from popculture.com. That's a pop culture place that you should hang out, maybe. While everyone else is zigging, NBC Universal is zagging. As every company in the world is trying to figure out how to make streaming profitable, NBC is bringing back an old cable channel from the dead. They are cable necromancers. NBC Sports Network, or NBCSN, is returning to the airways after shutting down in 2021. It will primarily show sports programming that would normally be shown on the corporation streaming service Peacock, including NBA or NBC, MLB games, WNBA games, college sports, the Kentucky Derby, Premier League football matchups, and the Olympics Gold Zone show. NBC Universal delivers the biggest moments in sports, and the new NBC Sports Network gives pay TV customers a seamless way to enjoy the wide range of sports in our portfolio, adding an important pillar in our linear and streaming strategy, says Matt Schnars. That is a freaking crazy Schnars. Schnars. Wonder if that's how he really pronounces his name. That's a fun name to say. Matt, you got a great name. He's the president of platform distribution and partnership at NBC Universal. The channel previously called Outdoor Life Network, which is weird to me. Then Versus, which is even more weird. Then NBCSN, which makes the most sense. Shut down 4 years ago during the company's massive push to streaming. Now NBC has seemed to realize there is still life in cable television after all. I have a Peacock subscription. I don't know why. I don't know what I watch on it. NBCSN will arrive first on YouTube TV, so it's not even going to cable first. So that's weird. We're going to bring back our cable TV show, but we're going to go to YouTube TV first. Then it's going to spread out to traditional cable providers, including parent company Comcast, also a monopoly oligarchy, taking over the internet. Sorry, I get so mad at oligarchy / monopoly cable companies and internet cable. There has to be a better way, folks. There has to be a better way. All right, so a time frame on that is currently unknown. But again, I like sports. I don't get to watch enough sports. I don't like. I go back and forth on the Kentucky Derby, though. I feel bad for the horses, but I do like watching the little guys on top of the horses ride the horses. Take that however you want. All right, so again, this will be happening here soon, and you can have all of the thing that you missed the most after these 4 years, which was NBCSN not being on television. This, to be honest with you, something needs to happen with sports, because whatever Disney is doing right now, Disney. Look, Bob, if you're out there, I know you don't know who the fuck I am. You probably don't even care. but freaking sell. In fact, Tim Cook and your predecessor guy, buy freaking Disney, add Disney into Apple, make Apple TV the one thing that has all of the stuff. Take Hulu into it, take Disney Plus into it, take ESP into it, and fix whatever the frick is going on at Disney. Their shares dropped like 7.8%. I don't even know what news came out this week, and their shares went down. I think they even had a better earnings call, and their shares went down. I think that's ridiculous. Apple, please, for the love of God, buy Disney and fix Disney, or buy Disney and even keep it as Disney, keep it all, but get the management better. I mean, I don't know. I guess Bob did a good job. I mean, Bob did a really good job prior to it going to the other guy, and then the other guy doing whatever he did, and then Bob getting it back, and then whatever the hell Bob's doing now. It's like, Bob, why are you even there? Point is, on ESPN Plus, I have no idea what's going on ESPN Plus. Like, it is the weird on Xbox anyway. It is the weirdest user interface. And the same thing with whatever the sports I think it's NBC, the other sports app that NBC has. I don't know what's going on with that interface. Someone needs to fix the way in which we stream sports. That's all that I'm asking for. Whoever takes over sports and gets sports going, change the way in which the streaming works on it, because the streaming drives me freaking crazy. There's no good organization. There's no good search functionality. There's no good categorization of playlisting that you can do on it. Like, it's like people the same thing with podcast apps. Podcast apps have the worst organizational features of all time. And again, we're working on fixing that. And I'm going to fix it because it drives me freaking crazy. And not only does it drive me crazy, I've done some consumer research, and I know it drives other people crazy. You got to be able to organize your stuff. It reminds me of this episode of Family Guy that I probably shouldn't talk about, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. There's an episode of Family Guy where they go into this hidden room where Chris has his adult stash of content, but he manages it for the entire, I don't know, school or something like that. And when you go down the hallway, everything's perfectly categorized. And Stewie's all like, you need to have this categorized. And then he goes in this explanation about why you need to have adult content categorized. Now, I'm not suggesting that we all go look at how adult content is categorized. What I'm suggesting is we take a look at the categorization of how we can organize our content in apps so that it better feeds what and how we are using the content, because it drives me freaking crazy. So, Apple, all I want you to do is buy Disney. That's all that I want you to do. And if you could let me know ahead of time, I'll go pick up Apple stock. I currently don't have Apple stock. Apple has not done anything innovative, in my opinion, recently. So, again, I'm excited for a few things. I'm excited for Apple to make the folding phone. I want to buy a folding phone so bad. I want to buy either a Google Pixel folding phone when it comes out. I want to get the Samsung folding phone. The folding screens work so well now. I don't know why we're not diving deep into folding screen technology more. And I know that Apple's working on it. They're probably going to have the best one because they're not the first to market. They're going to fix all the problems. They're going to make something incredible. I'm buying that Apple product as soon as it hits the shelves. Okay? First one to buy it. I'm telling everyone right now that if it's a freaking phone that folds into the size of my Mini is one of my favorite things in the entire world. If somehow you could get a phone to unfold into this, maybe it's a 3-fold flipper. Maybe it's folded into 3s, and that's how the phone works, and then it folds up, and then I have this pad along with the 3-fold phone. And I think that I want Apple to do this really well, because we're moving to glasses technology. I don't know why I can't get a freaking display Meta glasses. It drives me crazy. I don't have them yet. But I think Apple's going to be working on that too. Once we master neural bands and we master wearable glasses that are able to do displays really well, hands down, whoever can make those things, those are the next big winners. I'm calling that right now. Foldable phones, which are out there. I don't know why the marketplace isn't picking them up as much. They're way better, even though I don't have one, so I'm not going to say anything on that. And then secondly, glasses. This is going away. Glasses are going to be the main thing. And I encourage everybody to get on that bandwagon. And even though everybody hates me, and I will never pay graphic designers or illustrators to do comics or anything that use AI, I support that. But you got to learn how to use AI. And with that, I think I'll say, except for I hope you love check out sushi wherever you're at. Sushi and sushi. Um, and make sure that you follow Substack and make sure you're problem with my camera. So I'm really excited about that. I'm using a ripsaw razor to test it out because I found it in a drawer because I have so much equipment. I wanted to see how it worked apart from the black magic design that I normally use or that I started to use to get 1080p through this camera. And so I don't know why it's flickering, but I'm sure it has something to do with that. Or maybe I'm shaking the desk and it's moving the cord. But go check out Trey's Creator Trey Substack. Follow Creator Trey everywhere. Make sure that you watch Cos Talk Live with The Jinx Cosplay and Thermo. There's also Amber Bright. And there are some older episodes of Cosmom. I think she'll be back later. And then also Hopeless Knight does a show as well on there. So make sure that you check them out. Make sure that you check out Joey at the Geek Collective. We're working on getting some more content so I can talk to you about all the Kickstarters that we have going on there as well. Follow Chuck at Foulmouth Heathen and his band Cardboard Astronauts and his business Kyler and Kira. And with that, as I always say, well, first, my name is Jeremy. Listen to the Age of Jeremy podcast. I have a lot of cool branded stuff coming out in the future. If you want to hear me speak, check out 32warrioracademy.com. I'll be speaking at our Freedom Conference next year. And we will be live at Glendale Public Library, LibCon Foothills, December 7th. So come in, join in all the fun. I'm going to make sure that we have activities there that you guys can win some money or win some prizes because I'm always about prizes. And one day, I want to be the host of some show. Don't know what host show yet. I don't think I'd be good at Jeopardy. Don't think I'd be good at Wheel of Fortune. It has to be a really loud show, big loud show with lots of fireworks. Maybe it's a fireworks show. Who knows? But as I always say, be thankful, grateful, and kind. My name is Jeremy Quintanilla, and we'll talk with you guys soon. Bye.